Out in Sharo, a pair of miners find a dog out in the snow named Morozov. But that is the least of their problems. Besides, the thing from another world always strikes Antarctica first. Wait, right, I forgot about the Northman Nightmare comic. No, a ground of dimension area generators drop around the mine, the rare metal added being of interest to Nebula and its production of dark chips, showing once more that Nebula's interests are not limited to just the Japanese area. And because this is a problem involving Nebula, who should be called in to help but Netto Hikari? Unfortunately, this is a Mayuri Sekijima penned episode, meaning Netto is portrayed as an incompetent imbecile. And no, I will not get tired of bashing them for that, as it's an unnecessary and damaging exaggeration of character traits that is neither endearing nor assistive in resolving the plot of the week. This week, Sekijima is using the fact that Netto likes food to raid the free samples at a marketplace which depicts him as a glutton with no concept of self-control, which makes Netto have more in common with Homer Simpson than his canonical game counterparts. Again, acting like a protagonist hero is this completely hopeless at everything does not sell them as capable of dealing with the threats they're thrown into. It undermines that. You can have a character have flaws and failings they need to overcome, yes, but as I have said time and again, Sekijima's problem is he depicts characters as being nothing but their flaws just to get a cheap laugh, and it doesn't work. As, here's the joke in full. Netto devours all of Market's free food samples, only to be restrained by men in black. He thinks he's being arrested by security, but they're not police detectives. Why are they there? To hand him in person over to Rin, Yuichiro, and Meijin, who are all suddenly there because they need to talk to him about saving Sharo from itself. But Netto's still stuck on being in trouble for raiding the food samples.
突然、何を言い出すんだ?
それはこっちのセリフだよ。俺何がなんだかさっぱり。
Now, spot the joke. No, really, I'm waiting. Yeah, time's up. There isn't one. It's just meaningless, worthless filler when any of these people could have just called Netto on his PET and told him to fast-track it to the local airport so he can go deal with this Nebula attack in another country. And all done so Sekijima can deride the main characters as being too mentally slow to actually be the main hero. Like, if you're all tired of me saying the same thing on this matter, well, here's the key. I'm tired of having to say it, as legitimately every other writer on the show has made strides to improve things, while with every episode Sekijima's contributed, what makes their stories awful just stands out as insufferable more and more as we've seen evidence of how they depict the cast is no longer true of any of them, if it ever was. And again, it's not just Netto. Everyone here is stupid with how they react to all of this, and even why they're acting now. The rare metal mine, as it's literally referred to as, is said to be the source of 80% of the material they're mining. But unless it's something like Sakuradite, well, that's not really how we in the real world have found metal ore deposits to work. No one place has that high a concentration of any one thing. Hell, the reasons the writing staff have been unspecific about what rare metal this is outside of it just being a generic phlebotonium is simply to avoid any science conflicts about the stuff. Regardless, Netto and Rin meet with the Sharo military and Raika's boss, Morankov, which to show once more how the series hasn't handled Sharo the best, Morankov is more reasonable than Raika is. If you remember from Battle Network 4, the reason Raika was a jerk in his side story was because his boss was an even bigger asshole. Here, however, Sekijima, with his screw-ups, has now made it so that Raika has literally zero reason to have spent the series with a stick up his ass. Not in this setting, they're not. Prosthetics are always in high demand due to people being injured in dismembering accidents, to say nothing of birth defects, and I'd like to think replacement organs would be an even bigger issue. But if there is really that much of the stuff lying around spare that can go into something so ubiquitous as that, then you have immediately invoked a much larger plot hole. As if there's so much of it, then how was Yuichiro having so much trouble getting more for sacred chip research to the point that there are still only 2 synchro chips in the hands of the Net Sabers despite how much time has passed? And in turn, why did Burnerman have to stage a heist to recover the few shards of it that were available in Japan, if either of them could just have cracked open a prosthetic arm and melted down the rare metal that limb would have contained according to this exposition drop? However, Raika is shown to have a personal conflict in all of this, as that dog from before, Morozov, it was trapped in the dimensional area, and for some reason, that dog is considered the hero of the nation, and the government is abandoning them. As Raika explains, Sharo as a country was previously very poor due to the harsh weather conditions it experiences. There are literally weather control systems in this setting, both the anime and the video games. One of them was featured 2 episodes ago. There is literally no reason for it to be. But that changed when Morozov by accident stumbled across the rare metal deposit. The rare metal deposit that is found in a mine that is situated deep below the permafrosted ground. Yeah, good luck trying to justify that to me. While dogs do go digging or into the ground, they're not exactly burrowing animals, and permafrosted ground is really, really hard. But as they arrive, they see the dimensional area fade and renew itself. And despite that not being a phenomenon they've ever seen, Rockman somehow knows all about it. This being due to the size of the dimensional area and how long it's been active, requiring the hologram generators need to periodically dump their data and renew the field. And that is never at any point seen again by the fields. And frankly, we've seen larger dimensional areas than this one form too. They could have rationalized it as the properties of the unrefined rare metal is messing with the consistency of the field, or the weather conditions are affecting the stability of the converters. But no, once more narrative contradiction about these things just because. Now, I'd say they've also invoked a plot hole with this as well, considering Raika and Searchman have previously disabled and destroyed dimensional converters with their cross-server sniper fire. But as you might recall, Kenichi Araki was very fast to patch that story conflict the first chance he had by correcting it to, no, Raika and Searchman doing that would and should not have ever worked. So them not even trying it here isn't an active conflict like some have stated it to be. What is, however, is Sekijima once more ignoring already established plot points. When Raika helps Netto get up to speed to dive into the dimensional area, he grabs onto Netto to use him as a means of entering the field himself, but in a way that is in complete contradiction to how cross-fusion is said to work. For the gear to form around its wearer, they have to be inside or in contact with the dimensional area, as the dimensional area allows the hard light hologram to be mapped onto the body of the wearer. No hologram generator, no suit. And moreover, what allows someone with enough force to use the cross-fusion transformation to pierce it is the transformation itself creates a barrier around the user that protects them from attacks or falling debris as the suit forms over them. That is why we see that visual explosion of light and energy. And that explosion of light and energy as a barrier is what allows the user to get through the outer shield of the dimensional area, as the 2 shields disrupt each other enough to let a single solid object in the middle of one to pass through the other. Thus, Raika grabbing onto Netto, yeah, no, he should have been blown straight off of him once Netto made contact with the barrier. But not even that. The episode shows the cross-fusion armor forming before Netto even makes contact with the outermost layers of the dimension area, where it logically cannot form. And as much as I'd like to blame the director for the visual discontinuity on this, as the animation director, Taisuke Tsukushi, has actually become a bit known for visual continuity errors like that, well, the writing around the event doesn't exactly present the reality that it was just a directorial miscommunication that was the issue. And moreover, that whole exchange was completely unnecessary. Sekijima already established that this dimensional area field is more unstable than the normal ones, meaning it's completely plausible for someone to walk through the perimeter of the field when the barrier fails. They introduced something that contradicts prior lore with circumstances that would make it plausible for someone unusual like that to happen, and then they don't do anything with it. And why would even do that in the first place? Raika legitimately almost got both of them killed pulling a stunt like that, and threatened any goal they were trying to achieve. Considering Raika's a stickler for rules, regulations, and only respecting the authority and training of soldiers, Netto is damn right that Raika owes him an explanation. And the fact that Netto, Netto of all people, who Sekijima characterizes as an imbecile, is demanding one, really should be all you need to hear to realize how far off the deep end Raika's gone. All over a fucking dog. Now, as the episode eventually explains, Morozov is actually Raika's dog, and this was an attempt to finally soften on the character's awful portrayal all series. But as usual, it doesn't work because of how he's been presented here, flying off the handle for what is presented as the most superfluous of reasons. Especially since he knows Netto, and knows what to expect of him. Raika could simply have said, "Hey, can you help me with this?" And logically, Netto would have said, yes! Because that's the kind of guy Netto is when he's not being written as a selfish, imbecile, gluttonous idiot. This is once more what I mean when I say the failure to have consistency with the characters and only present their worst selves is an overall detriment. As instead of Netto having Raika finally come to be on good terms with one another by Netto helping Raika with a personal problem that's interfering with his capacity to do his job that gives them an angle to properly open up and Raika loosen up a little, having a personal issue just instead winds him tighter to the point of incredulity and his conduct an active danger to everyone, including his goals. And to add to the dumb of this episode, that entire scene I just talked over, why is Netto not in his crossed-fuse state? He knows there's enemies around. He didn't need to reload his battleship deck into his PET, and the gear protects him far better from the cold than just his normal clothes. As suddenly, despite wearing a jacket in the prior part of the scene, now he's completely without it despite cross-fusion not destroying their clothing. I will credit his jacket being gone to an animation error, but the episode has written Netto as having crossed out after entering the field. So there's no mulligan on that because they should have been drawing him as still fused up the entire time. So not only do you have a character contradiction plot hole from this, it's a narrative plot hole that then causes subsequent visual plot holes. As why this happens is so Netto and Raika can be attacked by excavation machines infested by nebula viruses. Will also be attacked by viruses in the real world. But by Netto sending Rockman in to fight the cyberspace ones, it then leaves them vulnerable to the real world ones. When once more, Raika should be the one dealing with the cyberspace ones as he can't cross-fuse, while Netto's the only one that can deal with the realized ones from the Darkloid mid-boss. And if Netto were cross-fused, then he'd just be able to shrug off any hits from those machinery. As while he's fused up, he's been shown as strong enough to literally lift those things or disable them via other physical means. It's the entire reverse of what this should be, and for no single explicable reason. And this reads even worse in comparison to what happened last episode, where all the tension and drama came from just a mundane hijacking where nothing with dimensional areas happened. That episode was better simply for the reason that there was no easy way out of the situation. For as I've explained before, an idiot plot occurs when the heroes of a story deliberately do not use the fastest, simplest method to resolving a situation for no justifiable reason given. Just because the story says so, and the only internal valid reason given is that everyone involved is an idiot and didn't think to do anything else. So, of course, all this does is threaten their lives to unnecessarily pad out the episode. Cold men watching their exploits without even needing to do anything to them. They're just going about killing themselves, simply because Raika thinks he knows better as he grew up playing in the mines? Oh look, there's even more major contradictions here. Morkov is Raika's dog. Morkov found the rare metal that's being mined here as some new major asset to the economy of the country. But Raika's in his late teens, early 20s at most. Even if Morkov ended up finding the metal as a puppy and in a pre-existing mine, which logically means the mine was pre-existing and it's really dumb to think the country didn't know of the metal being there from their own surveys, then logically Raika's dog is well past the point where he should have died. Also, yeah, they later say the mine was dug out after the discovery and wasn't a pre-existing excavation, so no, Raika could not have played here as a kid. As for its size, it needed to have first started as a development a decade ago to be as big as they show. Now, the Rockman.exe secret official setting illustration guide infers that Raika actually might be 13, despite being in the military, and the immense discrepancy between his apparent age and everyone else's. Remember, by the time they meet him, the Hikari brothers are supposed to be 12 or 13 themselves, yet by comparison Raika looks like a full adult. but that's long been believed to be a mistranslation, confusing his game counterpart being part of the 13th Division of Sharo's army's Net Division. And the difficulty in believing Raika's actually younger in this case comes from the fact that mining operations like this, industrial support and significant economic recovery, are not things that happen overnight. Thus, the farther out from the event of the metal's discovery, the better a detail that actually is. If this was like in the last couple of years, and the reason Raika's in the military is because of his service to the country, then that's really not the good sign they're trying to take it as, and presents the idea that there is a hell of a lot more fundamentally wrong with this world than just the machinations of the bad guys and some people being selfish jerks.
ゴールドマンと戦うんじゃないのか?
それはお前の任務だ。俺には関係ない。
Except your self-given mission would go a lot smoother if the viruses and Dark Lords were manifesting in the real world, dude. It hurts your chances at success if they can harm who you're looking for. And it's been a while since I've had this much material to rant about on an individual episode. And I think I've been trying to keep these episodes short for a reason. Raika finally gives up that this whole thing is him wanting to save his dog, but frankly after all this it's too little too late on the matter due to how the two have been drug around and this whole thing padded out. Eventually they manage to find the dog in the mine's break room, Raika giving the most flimsy of excuses on why they didn't just tell him directly and ask for help. Especially then has to fight Coldman directly to save them anyways. This ultimately results in Coldman's defeat, as by scaring him back into the net,
この時を待っていたぞ。
Searchman snipes him center mass. Though Coldman's thick siding protects him enough so he'll live for another day. The dimensional area, however, drops, leaving the rest free to leave, and Netto speaks on Raika's behalf to get him out of trouble before heading back home. At least once the blizzard that's about to hit clears, as Netto is not present in the next episode for a reason. The wrap-up. We have plot-designated idiot, to how Mayuri Sekijima writes characters. We have idiot plot, to several events of this episode reading no other way. We have contradictory contrivances, for how things in this episode read opposite of presented lore for no reason. We have it'll be a cold day in hell, for someone evil being ice-themed. And we have their evil is measured in dead puppies, to Coldman kicking Morozov being what sets off the circumstances for him to be curb-stomped. This episode... For everything it wants to do right, it does another two things wrong. Finally bonding with Raika? Good. Him endangering themselves and others? Bad. Netto calling out the harmful antics of someone else? Good. Him being presented as a moron and enabling that crisis? Bad. The adults around them being poignant about the need to deal with this situation quickly? Good. Not doing everything to get this done as fast as possible and with the lowest casualties capable? Bad. This one needed a lot more revision on it to get it to the functional story it needed to be. And as it is, it just doesn't work. But at the very least for a Sekijima episode, there is some progress made. For next time Raika shows up, he's much less of a jerk.